There is a man named Ikenna here on YouTube, and he is making money with the claim that you can learn any language in 6 months. And he's willing to sell you an ebook that tells you his method. He's got plenty of YouTube videos that tell you his method and his advice for free. Claims you can learn Russian in 6 months. You can learn French in 6 months. You can learn Chinese in 6 months. Now, it's a little bit strange for me to see this and respond to this, because I did learn Chinese in 7 months. I have the certificate from the language school to prove it. That might sound very impressive. That might sound like I could have a career just like Ikenna, coming on here and selling you guys pep talks about how you can learn Chinese in 7 months. Okay? As soon as you move into the details, that claim becomes less and less impressive, and it's also clearer and clearer that you can't possibly expect to get results similar to my own unless you make unbelievable sacrifices for that period of 7 months, right? So on that surface level, let's just say I upload a YouTube video like Ikenna, and I say how to learn Chinese in 6 months. And I can say, hey, I did it, so you can do it too. You know, okay. I lived in the school. I slept in the language school in China. I ate breakfast and lunch in the school. I worked with the teacher face-to-face for 4 hours a day, 5 days per week. No other students. One teacher, one student. When I wasn't in class with the teacher, I wrote essays. I brought those essays in. She corrected them. Writing essays in Chinese. Okay? The more you know about what I did during those 6 or 7 months, and the level I achieved by the end of it, the less and less encouraging this story is going to become, the more and more discouraging it's going to become, because you realize that you couldn't possibly recreate the circumstances that I am describing here, and probably even if you did, you would struggle to be highly motivated enough to get these results in the same space of time, right? Look, if I were to do it again today, I might struggle with motivation. Also, my life has changed. My life has gotten worse in the years since then, when I had these 6 or 7 months of intense, focused work on Chinese with really no distractions in my life. I had no distractions except making and uploading YouTube videos. That school was very impressed with the progress I made. Some teachers said that I had made more progress than any other student they ever had, but I had more hours of studying there than any other student they ever had. And when I first arrived, I was really at level 0 because I had just been studying Japanese. I'd studied Japanese for quote-unquote 2 years in an academic setting. A year in university does not mean 12 months, so 2 quote years unquote of Japanese. And immediately before I went to that school, I'd been in Thailand speaking Thai every day. So like my brain had switched from Japanese to Thai and then Thai to Chinese. So I was really struggling to say the simplest of sentences in Chinese when I first got there. And then, wow, like magic, 6 months later, look at the results I've got, right? But wouldn't it be misleading, even in these circumstances, even with all this disclosed, for me to come here on YouTube and sell you the dream that I learned Chinese in 6 months and you can too? When you move past the headline, what becomes clear is instead, I learned Chinese in 6 months, and here's why you can't. Here's why nobody can. Here's why nobody else does. Just add up the number of hours I had one-on-one with a dedicated teacher. It was a really talented, really excellent Chinese teacher too. If you do the same amount of time, you have a worse teacher, you have a worse method, you'll get worse results. Like we could start to break down just how unique and exceptional and special those circumstances were. And this is not even disclosing the amazing background I had in language education before going into this. Even if you just talk about languages I'd studied and kind of failed at, like, I'd already studied Pali for 10 years. I'd already studied Thai, Laotian, Cambodian, a little bit of Burmese, a little bit of Sinhalese, Korean back in the day. I just mentioned I did 2 academic years of Japanese. I learned Chinese in 6 months. This is not even mentioning French, German, other languages that are less difficult. Okay, so I stepped into that school with this incredibly robust background in other languages. I stepped in with a really peculiar set of motivations, with this really intense schedule, and then I was willing to live my life eating my meals in that school and doing nothing but study Chinese, eat vegan food in the cafeteria. I'd go to the gym twice a day and lift weights, and I'd make YouTube videos, and that was it. All right, I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't have a girlfriend, didn't have any distractions. You know what I mean? I in a sense, I didn't have a life. And there were other people in that school who lost their minds after like 2 weeks of having a less intense schedule than I did. They couldn't put up with the monastic quality of it, like it was like living in a Buddhist monastery. They couldn't put up with the militaristic quality of it, that it was like living in an army camp. They couldn't tolerate that. I remember there was a girl from Sweden. She couldn't do 2 weeks. She'd like paid for a month, and after 2 weeks, she was like, no, forget it. I have to get a refund. She has to go on vacation because she was flipping out, and her schedule was way less demanding than mine. Almost nobody was doing. It was very unusual. Do 4 hours a day, face-to-face teacher 5 days a week. Okay, so look, the moral of the story I'm presenting here so far is not that it's impossible to learn a language in 6 months. It's just barely possible. But when you get into the type of circumstances, the type of caveats, and the type of commitments, you're going to figure out why it's impossible for you, why this is not an option for you, why this is inaccessible for you. With that having been said, do I consider Ikenna to be a scam artist? No. Do I consider the ebook he's selling to be a ripoff? It's currently about $20 US. No. Okay. Do I even consider these YouTube videos that from my perspective are full of lies? Like what he's saying is just wrong and it's bad advice. But do I consider that to be a scam? No. What he's selling that's still really worth something to people is encouragement. And encouragement is very hard to put a price on. If you can pay $20 and get this ebook and you watch his YouTube videos and maybe you have some other interaction with him online, and that gives you encouragement and motivation and makes you feel like, hey, this guy managed to learn Russian. This guy managed to teach himself Chinese. So if he can do it, I can do it also. I really deeply appreciate how that encouragement could be worth something to you, especially in the context of people paying $25,000 a year to study a language in university and receiving no encouragement, or only receiving negative encouragement. You pay $25,000 a year, go to a university to study a language, and you get treated like garbage by the professors, okay? There was one professor of Chinese at my university in Canada. I had a formal complaint against her for misconduct. To be blunt, she was abusive towards me. I had to take a formal complaint to the ombudsman and the head of the department, the head of faculty. It was this big thing and a huge negative impact on my life. All right, had a huge negative impact on my life for years that this one professor, was an asshole towards me. And what would it take for this professor to just be kind and decent and professional towards me? But she can't do it. But there was a moment that was really interesting. She was cussing me out. She was really calling me an idiot. She was insulting me, and it just went on and on. And she spoke Chinese as a first language. Her English was not that good, so it was also very hard to just communicate with her once she got angry. She was going on this crazy rant. And when I got up to leave, my notebook sat open on the chair. I just stood up. I had to kind of get my bag and stuff. And that was the first time that she saw my handwriting in Chinese. And she gasped. Her eyes went wide open. She'd been teaching Chinese for years. She'd never seen like a level 1 student with Chinese handwriting as good as my handwriting. Now, again, I've already mentioned I'd studied many other languages. I'd lived in Asia. There are different reasons in terms of the discipline I had. Studying a language like Laotian, Pali, there were skills I brought to this. I learned how to write the traditional orthography for Cree. Okay, I'd done a lot of work with strange languages and a pen and paper, right? She saw my Chinese handwriting and she gasped Her mouth was open, her eyes were wide, and she pointed and she said, "That is your handwriting?" I wonder if she would remember that. I laughed, I smiled at her, I said, "I'm a good student. You didn't know this about me? Like, you're treating me like crap. You're insulting me, you're reviling me, you're discouraging me," okay? What is encouragement? Is it worth $20? Yes. If it's worth it to you to watch these YouTube videos and get this encouragement, I completely sympathize. And I know how most of us struggle in isolation with only discouragement and no positive encouragement at all. However, if you take these claims made by Ikenna, the problem is you have to interrogate them in terms of how many people fail on this program. He puts out an ebook, he puts out YouTube videos, he says, here's the process, follow these steps, you can do it, and then he posts email comments. He posts, people send him email saying, thank you, it worked, these are the results I got, it was great. He posts only those positive comments. You don't know what percentage of people failed, okay? The most basic element of social science research is that you have to survey the failures just as much as the successes. If anything, you want to interrogate the failures even more. The method I used to learn Chinese in 6 months, let's just say we had the budget and we repeated it with 100 different students. I would bet that 0 of the students would get positive results from the same program the way I did. That would be my bet. Maybe there'd be one. Maybe there'd be one guy like me who could take advantage and thrive, and in those 6 months really do well in Chinese or do better than I did. Maybe there'd be 1 in 100. But I'm not a gambling man. If I were betting on it, I would bet 0 success rate, 100% failure. If you define success as you got the same results I got from studying Chinese intensively in 6 months with those same methods, okay? The results would not be reproduced. You'd get failure, and if you did this, let's apply for funding and do this study. How many people can learn Chinese in 6 months using the Eisel-Mazard method, using the Abba-Lissiel method, okay? How many people can do that, all right? If you then did a survey and asked them why, you'd get very human answers. You'd get answers like that Swedish girl I mentioned who said, oh, I can't stand it. This is like living in an army camp. This is like living in a Buddhist monastery. I'm losing my mind. You're going to get all kinds of different answers. You're going to get people saying, oh, I feel discouraged. I can't just sit down and write an essay like this every day, and I don't like the teacher. I don't get along. You're going to get all kinds of complaints and gripes. You're going to get people just complaining that they're lazy, or people say they're addicted to video games. They sign up for this, but then they spend all their time sitting in their room playing video games or something. You're going to get a whole range of human explanations for why this didn't work for them, okay? And that's the tragedy of giving language learning advice on the internet, is that everyone wants to pretend they've discovered the secret and they've got it in a bottle and they can sell it to you now for just $20 if you buy my ebook. And the reality is there is no secret.